Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started here. I know the roads were probably a little bit slick, so we'll probably have some folks coming in throughout these first few minutes. Just so everybody knows, we will share out the slideshow you'll see today through our communications, our weekly updates to the guidance department as well as on the website. So if you don't exactly get everything today or there's a lot of information I know that's going to be presented to you, we will have this obviously these slides, and we'll also have the live stream recorded for you to review back later. I'm not going to speak too much. There's a lot to go through, and I have an expert with me, thankfully. So this is Brenda Dillon. She is a representative, or what's your exact title?
I'm an assistant director.
She's the assistant director, of financial aid at the University Office of Scholarships and Financial Aid at Kent State University. There has been, obviously, a lot of, for those of you who have seniors, I know we might have some junior parents here, and it's great to kind of get the exposure to the financial aid aspect of the college process now. But FAFSA in particular has had a lot of changes this year. That's the reason we've actually had this night, in December as opposed to October when we usually hold it. So a lot of good information for you here. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Brenda, and then at the end, we will try to take maybe 5 or 10 minutes for some general Q&A. So if you have some general questions for the good of the order, we'd be happy to hear it, and then we'll get you on your way home. So, Brenda?
Well, thanks for having me, Kyle, and good evening, and I do appreciate everybody heading out in tonight's Ohio weather. So, of course, it saved the event for tonight when you had somewhere to be. Again, my name is Brenda Dillon. I'm an assistant director with Kent State in the financial aid office. So tonight we're just going to be going through financial aid and scholarships. If you have questions, I will be here at the end, so feel free to, if you have something, you can raise your hand, or we can wait till the end. So we're going to be looking at how do you apply for federal aid? Are you eligible? How do you get scholarships, which will be where we're going to spend quite a bit of our time tonight. And then what will you have to pay out of pocket, and what do you need to know if you decide to take out loans? So we'll be looking at the application process, the awarding process, types of financial aid, and estimating your costs. So the first item is the application. And so many of you have, how many of you have had students who have gone through this process in prior years? Okay, well, for those of you, you may have been more familiar with the FAFSA was ready in October, and everybody was filing it nice and early. Not this year. So it hasn't even opened up yet for 24-25. So for any of you who are thinking, am I late to the party? You are not. You're right on time. So they're expecting to open it probably around December 30th, and they're doing what they call a soft launch. So they've revamped it extensively, so they will open it, and then they will probably close it briefly, fix any bugs, go ahead, reopen it, and continue on. The data that is provided via the FAFSA, colleges and universities aren't even going to get that data until the end of January. Right now is what the Department of Ed is telling us. So with the FAFSA, you'll need to submit that and then look at your priority deadlines. If your son or daughter is applying to multiple schools, you'll want to look at each individual school's priority aid deadlines. So for many, January 1st or February 15th are priority dates. February 15th for many of the scholarships that are merit-based and based on the ACT scores, SAT scores, or GPA. A lot of those have a priority of February 15th. So you'll want to be admitted and applied by that date. The FAFSA for next fall, which is 24-25, is going to be using your 2022 tax data. And one of the differences this year with the FAFSA is that you aren't going to have the option of, do I want to use the IRS data retrieval tool? It's required. They're going to go and pull that data directly from the IRS. So the first step in this process is actually creating an FSA ID. And so both parents in the household are going to need an ID as well as the student. If there is a step-parent in the household, they will need an FSA ID. This is a big change from prior years. So not only will the student need an FSA ID, but both parents are going to have to sign because that tax data is being pulled directly over from the IRS. So anybody who's on that tax return is going to have to be a signatory to the FAFSA. And so it will require what they call consent, and there will be a little checkbox. So the good news is, part of the revamp for you all is that there's fewer questions than any other year. So as far as that goes, it's getting simpler, but just know that everybody's going to need an FSA ID, and you can do that now. And it generally takes 72 hours for them, once you apply for the FSA ID, to go ahead and issue that to you. And then you'll want to make sure that student FSA ID and password, and then both parents are separate. And you'll want separate emails for that, because otherwise it's going to get very confusing as to who the Department of Ed is trying to reach out to. So emails, passwords, keep them separate. You don't want to be applying with the parent FSA ID in the student section. So social security numbers, email addresses, tax information, those will come through with the tax IRS data retrieval tool. And then if you've got untaxed income, child support, voluntary contributions to retirement accounts, those types of things. And then whatever is in your cash savings accounts, checking accounts, whatever the balance is on the day that you're filing the FAFSA. A lot of people get thrown for a loop of, do I pick the most amount or the least amount that I've had all year? Just whatever that amount is on the day that you're filing. Having technical difficulties with my button. So one of the other changes this year is that if you own a family farm, they have excluded that for almost 10 years now from the income component of the FAFSA, and they will not be excluding family farm starting with 24-25 and moving forward. So just again, if you've filed in previous years and have a family farm and didn't have to report that, that's going to be a little different this year. So when you go out to fill out the FAFSA, you have to tell them who's starting this application. And if you're starting it as the student, then you want to do that under the student's FSA ID and password. And then it will tell you just to go ahead and start. And you'll want to make sure you're in the correct aid year, because we are still open and students are still applying for financial aid for 23-24. So just make sure that you select the 24-25 FAFSA. Because we have that happen quite frequently. People will call and say, why haven't I gotten any financial aid? And then we take a look and, yeah, they applied for a prior year. So just make a note of that. So again, on that first page, there's lots of little icons for help. Anything that has a little eye by it, you can hover and it'll do a pop-up box and give you more information on any of the questions. And then there's also little videos that they've embedded inside the process that are like 1 to 2 minutes, and you can watch those just to understand what the next series of steps are going to be. And then it also talks about who the contributors are going to be, whether, who's the student as well as who are the parents. And then we've got consent. And it talks about who is going to have to consent. And again, anybody who's on that tax return is going to have to consent in order to have that data pulled over. And then once you complete it, it also gives you a little page that says, okay, this is what's going to happen next. So this year you'll apply, and then you're going to wait, because they're not even going to send us your data until the end of January. So you can always double check once that end of January hits to make sure that the colleges that you submitted to have your financial aid data. But if you hit the button and call us, we're not going to see it because they're not going to be sending it to us right away this year. And again, this is an example of that consent page. So, providing information that, this is your student, that these are your tax information, and yes, you do understand that then this data is going to be used as part of the financial aid process. And if parents decline to give consent, then students would be limited to just an unsubsidized loan, which for freshmen would be $5,500 for the year. So they would not be eligible for any other grants or state aid. So again, demographics, marital status, what are you planning on doing? Are you coming for an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree? Where are you enrolling? And then they go through a series of questions to find out, are you independent or dependent? And I know a lot of students think, I'm independent, and that's a status of the student. So are you dependent on your parents, or does the federal government consider you independent? A lot of students think, I'm very independent, but that's not really how the feds look at it. So you need to be 24. If you have children of your own that you're providing more than 50% of the support for, if you're an orphan, a ward of the court, or a veteran. So those would be the things that would put you into independent status. So for most students in high school, you're going to be dependent and be required to submit your parent information. Unusual circumstances, this is generally for returning students who have maybe transferred from a variety of different schools. So as an incoming freshman, you're probably gonna not have any issues with that question. And then it allows you, as I said, if you do not have consent, it does allow you to opt in and just say, well, I'm just gonna apply for the direct unsubsidized loan and I don't want any other federal aid. And then it'll ask parents' marital status. So once you tell them, once you go through the selection of I'm not a veteran, I'm not an orphan, I'm not a ward of the court, I don't have any children, and it then says, okay, you're a dependent student, you're gonna see this page, and then you'll go forward and be able to determine, okay, do I have any other unusual circumstances? If not, then it'll allow you to move forward and fill out the form. And then you invite your parents to fill out the form. This is also different. So you're gonna have your parents' email and you're gonna go ahead and put that in, and then they will get an invite to complete their portion of the FAFSA. So parent and then parent spouse, if appropriate. It'll go through, ask questions about gender, race and ethnicity. We don't generally use this data for any purposes. This is just federal tracking data so they know who's applying for aid. More student demographics, again, your name, your citizenship status. If you have a parent who is a veteran or whatnot who was killed in the line of duty, that question is on here, and that does open up additional aid eligibility for students. And then your high school completion and what is your high school. So again, and all of these questions are, you start pre-filling like you would start with Brecksville Broadview, and it's gonna go ahead and populate that for you. It'll ask for assets, and then for the student, if you filed a tax return, they're gonna ask you to go ahead and give consent for the IRS to pull that over. And so they'll pull over your tax information. If you haven't filed a tax return, that's okay. You can just tell them I did not file, I was not required to file a tax return. So either you didn't have sufficient income or you didn't work and need to be able to file an income tax form. And then you'll pick the colleges. They've upped the number of schools, so you can now file at up to 20 schools, which is a lot, but for those kids that can't decide, you know, it gives them options. And if you're looking for Kent, this is our federal school code, which is the 003051. And then the regional campuses have their own codes with basically a hyphen and 01, 02, 03, 04 after that number. If you're looking at Kent, Maine, it's 003051. And so you'll fill in all the different colleges that you want the information to be sent to, and then you're going to be asked to review the information that you've put in and then sign it. And then you'll be able to see, that's a screenshot of what it will look like, that you'll be able to see, oh, did your parents get the e-invite? Was it delivered? And then on the parents, this is what it'll look like. It's going to come in from federal student aid, and it's going to be telling you, hey, you've been asked to complete your portion of the FAFSA. And then you'll log in using your FSA ID, and then give them your information. And again, it's the same kinds of information, that it's who's contributing, the definitions of who's a parent, who has to provide information, who has to file, which is a little different than prior years. And again, who's the contributor. You'll consent. If you don't consent, again, that just puts the student, will still receive the data, but then the student would only be receiving those unsubsidized loans. The feds don't allow a parent to say, I'm just not going to file, and then have the student receive all the aid that they would normally be eligible for. So again, identity information, providing consent, demographics, your name, your address, all those basics, the finances, and then review and sign. So they're asking marital status, legal residency, and again, this is 2022 tax data, the family size and the number in college. That'll be important because that information is used as part of the calculation for aid. Because it's going to be a little bit different if you have 4 in college than if you just have 1. And then we've got the parent signature. So again, you go through, you pull in that data, you consent or not, and then you sign and complete your section, and you get a little balloon. The theme seems to be balloons this year. So it'll give you a congratulations screen, and then you'll also, the student will be getting that email to notify them of your updated status. So the FAFSA is now down to like a dozen questions. It's really pretty straightforward as compared to some of us who did it in the past, where it was like sheet after sheet after sheet of paper, and you were having to manually enter everything. So, and then once you do this this year, then next year when you refile, because you will be doing this every year that you're enrolled in college and want financial aid, all of your demographic information, they'll just ask you to confirm it, get new tax data, and everything else, if it's the same school, they'll just send it right on out. So it gets easier the more you, in your subsequent years. So in this process, there's a thing called verification. So this is where the federal government reviews your data that you've submitted, and then they'll notify you that you've been selected for verification. It's their version of a little audit, and they'll notify your colleges that you've selected to say, okay, we now need you, college or university, to collect the following information from the student or the parent. So they'll ask for a copy of the tax return, or we'll need a student's W-2, or whatever information. They'll tell us what it is. Only about 20 to 25% of families nationwide get selected for this process. So Again, it's not everybody, but it is one of those things that if you do get selected, it's not optional. Reach out to your school and definitely find out what you need to submit so that that way you can get through that process as quickly as possible. Now, professional judgment are things that maybe you can't see it on the FAFSA. 2022 was a long time ago. I mean, that was 2 years ago. So if families have had substantial changes to income, we are permitted to use special circumstance to make adjustments to financial aid. So if you've had a divorce or your job has changed and you have a significant change to your income since 2022, you still pull in those 2022 tax records, but then you need to let your colleges and universities know that, hey, we've had this change, or we had a huge medical expense. And so we need this factored in with our financial aid. So again, we'll review that. We'll ask for different information, loss of employment, benefits, again, unusual medical or dental expenses, because again, things may have changed since the tax data went in. So submit those taxes, but then if you really do have something that's changed significantly, reach out to your colleges and look on their website for special circumstance, and most of us will have a form. That's one of the things you'll find out with financial aid. We can usually fix it or find a way to deal with it. We just are going to need a form for that. So once the FAFSA is completed, the federal government is then going to send us that data. We're going to take that data and we're then going to move it through our financial aid process, and we will then package you with not only any merit or admission merit type scholarships that are based on GPA or ACT, SAT scores, but then we'll add in all of your federal aid, state aid, any institutional grants, any of that type of information. It'll all be in one document, financial aid offer, and you'll be able to see it both electronically via Flashline, which is our electronic portal for students, that again, once you're accepted, you'll be given a kent.edu email address and a login as a student, so you'll be able to see that offer. And we still mail paper packets to incoming freshmen, so that way you will get something in the mail. And we do have multiple events on campus as you get closer to the date, so that if you do have questions, we'll run labs on campus, so you can come in and you can meet with an individual financial aid advisor and have a personalized appointment, and we'll go through your application and your award and your offer, and then you can get any specific questions once you have that offer in hand through the financial aid office. So they generate a student aid index. So many of you who have had this process before may remember the EFC, which was the estimated family contribution. They've done away with that, and they've come up with this student aid index number, and that's calculated from the information on the FAFSA. And so then you have cost of attendance less other aid that you're awarded will then be your remaining need. So, and cost of attendance, you can see up here we've got billable costs. And so those are things that if you're living on campus, we're going to charge you to live in the residence hall. If you're getting a meal plan through Kent State, we're going to charge you for a meal plan. And then we're going to charge you for the tuition. If for students who live at home or off campus, we wouldn't be billing you for your room and your housing because you would be living with your parents. So again, but your general billable costs are tuition fees and then your residence hall and meal plan. And the non-billable, these are things that they're still expenses. You're still going to need books. You're still going to need some transportation costs, some supplies, any equipment, depending on your major. So those all get factored into this thing called cost of attendance, which is your overall budget. So again, SAI is calculated by the department. It's an index, not a dollar amount, and so they send us that number, and then we put it through our packaging system, and that will tell us how much federal grants you're eligible for. And again, it's the same number no matter what school you're going to, and it'll give us information so that we can build your offer letter with both the federal and the state aid. So again, billable costs, tuition fees, housing, and then non-billable is everything else. So you'll get an invoice, like for instance, Kent State bills by the semester. So you'll get an invoice for fall semester, and then at the end of fall semester, you'll get an invoice for spring. And then your aid offer is the total for the year, and you'll see the aid presented for each semester as well as your costs. So that way you can look at each semester as well as getting an idea of what that total is. And that number can, vary widely depending on the school. So definitely when you start getting offers from your various colleges, definitely lay them out and take a look and compare and see what your actual out-of-pocket cost is going to be. The Department of Education this past year has asked colleges and universities to use a more uniform award offer so that way it's easier for families to compare what does this mean. So the different programs, gift aid, which is the best aid, and that's scholarships and grants, and then self-help aid is work study and loans. So on the application for entry, for your admissions application with Kent State, you can tell us whether or not you want work study. You used to be able to tell the schools on the FAFSA, but they took that question off. So now we have to get that information elsewhere. And then, everybody's least favorite is loans. But let's talk a little bit more about scholarships. So there's lots of types of scholarships. I've mentioned already merit, which is based on GPA and test scores. That happens generally right in with your admissions process. So once you're admitted, if you're eligible for any of those merit scholarships, you'll get notified. And then when your offer letter comes out, those will also be reflected on your financial aid offer. The other thing you have is internal scholarships. So we're a university, so every one of our colleges, the College of Business, the College of Architecture, the College of Arts and Sciences, they all have their own scholarships that you can apply for. And then if they determine that you are awarded that scholarship, they'll notify us in the financial aid office, and again, we'll add that to your offer. The third area is external scholarships. So if you have not started hunting for external scholarships and you're a senior, you need to get on that. That needs to be your new part-time job for the next 30 days. Many of them will have deadlines coming up here at the end of the year, especially some of the smaller programs, because they have to get all the applications in, they have to review everything, and if they have a small staff, that may take them a couple of months. So they set those deadlines fairly early. So you can use Scholarship Universe, which is through Kent State. It shows you all of not only Kent's internal scholarships, but also it's a national search service. It's free. No service should be asking you for your social security number. You'll need to put that on your FAFSA, but that's different. If somebody's emailing you saying, give me your social security number and $200 and I'll find you some aid, delete it and run. Just don't do it because you should not be paying for scholarships. You don't need to pay for scholarship information. So it takes about 20 minutes to set up an account with all of your different information, and you put in all your activities and all the things that you like to do, and then it'll tell you these are all the scholarships that you can apply for. And that's both internally to Kent as well as nationally. And so you'll need to look, if you're looking at schools other than Kent, you're going to need to look at what is their process. Do they have their own scholarship search platform that you need to go through to get other scholarships through them that are not merit-based. So definitely be checking your schools that you're applying to, the various scholarship pages on their website. And everybody's going to have their own deadlines. And now that everything is online and everything is submitted electronically, the deadlines are no joke. If they say it's going to close on at 11:59 on December 1st, it closed at 11:59 p.m. on December 1st. There's no going back. So be sure that as you're looking at all of these scholarships, that you mark down what are the deadlines, and then what do you need to do? Do you need to submit a video? Do they want an essay? Do they want proof of some of the work that you've done in high school? Each one's a little different, so be sure you know what you need to supply and the deadline to get it in. And it can really add up. I know some of them will look and you'll be like, oh, it's $500, but $500 here, $500 there, it adds up in a big hurry. So, and a lot of times, if they are tuition specific, sometimes you get enough of those that you don't have to borrow as much because you're covering your cost with those scholarships. There are a lot of scholarships that don't require the FAFSA. So even if you're a parent that's not planning on filling out the FAFSA, definitely be looking at scholarships. So free money, no FAFSA. Look at parent and student employers, local organizations, Elks, Rotary, whatever. Your local library also generally carries a list. Check with your counseling office. They may also have a list. But, be sure that you're looking at all of your options. So we are test optional at Kent State, so you may want to check with your schools. Do they require that an SAT or ACT score be provided in order to be eligible for merit scholarships? And so again, Scholarship Universe, you can find internal, external, as well as free money. And again, start now if you haven't already started. Get your application. See if what essays is everybody looking at? What do you need to write? And be aware of those deadlines. The other important thing is there are many scholarships that are only open to freshmen. So this year is the first year that you're going to apply with the FAFSA, but it's also the first year that you're going to do your scholarship search. Once you move forward and progress in your program, there are going to be scholarships that unless and until you're a junior and you have a certain level of work, you're not even going to be eligible to apply. So this is not something that you just check for scholarships as a freshman. Keep going. Every year you should be looking and searching and applying for scholarships. So federal and state grants, the federal Pell Grant has a max, as you can see, of the $7,395. SEOG, this is the Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant. This is only provided to certain schools. So it's a very old program and it's grandfathered in and there's a limited pool of funds. So when we had talked about earlier that, hey, there's a priority deadline for getting the data in and getting that FAFSA filed, that's one of the programs that frequently you need to be early on the date stamp of when you filed that FAFSA in order to be eligible for those funds, because there's not that much of it out there. And then we have the Ohio College Opportunity Grant. Ohio Higher Education. Make a note of that, and maybe even send that out with the follow-up. There are new scholarships that the state of Ohio has created through the governor's office they're all new. We're just getting information about how they work and the criteria. But you can go out and look at what's available, what they've posted so far at Ohio Higher Education, and then it's under paying for college. So Ohio, we previously just had the grant, but now they've got a whole other series of scholarships and grants. This won't apply to you folks, but if you were from Pennsylvania, we do get, we do work with the FIA grant program as well. Work study, so this can either be federal work study or university-funded employment, meaning the Kent State hires you as a student worker and Kent State pays you, as opposed to the feds paying you through federal work study. But there are thousands of student jobs on campus. I always encourage students, it may not pay as much as the McDonald's down the street, but when you have a finals project due and you come to me as your supervisor and say, I really need tomorrow off to finish my project, I'm gonna say, of course you do. And that's, school first, so we'll see you when your project's done. As opposed to McDonald's, which may be like, don't really care. You gotta do your shift, and then, it's on you. So definitely take a look at federal work study. This is aid that will appear on your offer, but it doesn't come off your bill because it's a salary that you earn during the semester. So a lot of students use that as money, then they're spending money that they'll have during the semester. And everybody's least favorite, federal direct loans. There are two types. The direct loan can either be subsidized or unsubsidized. What does that mean? Why could they pick a more opaque way of describing what this is? Subsidized is they have a subsidy and they're paying the interest while the student is in school. Subsidized, good. Unsubsidized, it is what it is. And so interest is accruing on the unsubsidized loan while the student is in school. The feds are paying the interest on the subsidized, so they're paying the subsidy of the interest. And again, you would, once you file with the FAFSA, you would need to go out and complete entrance counseling and the master promissory note. And then most schools are gonna package you with federal loans. And you'll go out onto whatever system, like in our case it's Flashline, you'll go out and you'll either say, yes, I want it, or no, I don't really want this. I'm not gonna take loans. And then if you change your mind, which sometimes that happens, a student thinks they're gonna get a scholarship and maybe they don't, you can always reach out to the financial aid office and we can put it back on the offer if you've declined it. There are also Parent Plus loans and private loans. So if you still have a gap after all of your aid has been offered and there's still a dollar amount that you need to pay between the billable charges and what you've received in aid, Parent Plus loan is an option where the parent is the borrower. Just do remember, you can't ever transfer that to the student. They can make an arrangement with you to pay it, but there's no way within the federal system to get that moved into the student's name. So just keep that in mind. The other is private loans, where the student is the borrower, but they'll need a credit-worthy cosigner. So estimating the cost. Again, tuition, each school it's going to be different in how they bill tuition, but take a look at your individual universities. Some of them call it the bursar, some of them call it the financial office, others call it the billing office. Every school's a little different. And then food and housing, so you'll also see dining services, that may also be out there. And they will be able to tell you what the plans are. And it can vary drastically for housing and meal plans. If you choose like the highest level meal plan and a private room, in the newest residential hall, that's gonna cost you a little bit more than a standard double in a regular residence hall. So just be mindful of that what you're being selected, how you're selecting your housing as well. So build costs minus your aid tells you what's left, what's due. And that comes out in a bill from the bursar's office, and that's due semester by semester at the start of the semester. So again, you're gonna complete that admissions process because you can't get financial aid offers until you've been admitted to the school. And then you're going to get your FSA ID, which you can do now before the FAFSA is open, so you're ready to go. And then you're going to complete that FAFSA when it opens. It's going to make the news because they're so far behind. Normally it's open in October, so I would expect it'll make the evening news. It'll be on whatever radio station you listen to. Somebody will have that out there, and you might even get a blast from the high school telling you it's open. And then search for your scholarships, and again, that is really for students. Get after that and see how many applications you can get in between now and the end of the year. And then you can start looking at, what is your cost. There is a thing called the net price calculator that if you search at the various colleges, you can put in your information off your tax information, and it will pull up what like families with that information, what kind of aid they received previously at that institution. And every school has one, and it's offered, it's a requirement through the Department of Education. And then students' email. I know, a lot of us, it's old school. Nobody likes doing, a lot of things, students don't check email that much anymore because everything's on your phone and it's a text. Federal regulations have not caught up with 2023 and texting and emailing. We can sometimes notify you that there is a change going on via text, but we can't tell you any of the detail. So anything that we need from you, we're going to be communicating via your email address at the university, not Gmail, because again, we're going to want you to log in behind that firewall to have access to any of your financial information. So that's something that watch your different schools, the email addresses, because if financial aid or somebody needs something from you, that's where they're going to be reaching out and contacting you through, is through that email address. And so these are our various websites. You can go out to the scholarship. We have a specific page. If you decide that you're going to need to supply a special circumstance, that's out there on forms and applications. And then there's also our general financial aid site. And this is if something goes wrong on your FAFSA, your school can't fix it. So you're going to need to contact the Federal Student Information Center, which is the 1-800-4FED-AID. So if something goes wrong with a password, or it's getting hung up, or you applied with the wrong FSA ID and now the parent is listed as the student, they're the ones that'll have to fix that and get that corrected. And then Federal Student Aid is everywhere on Instagram, Facebook. The only place they're not is TikTok, but otherwise they're on all the major platforms. And again, just remember, hundreds of thousands of families do this every year. It's a lot of information, but in the end, it's just fill out the form, wait, get the more information, look and see, okay, do I have something else going on? Should I, have a special circumstance? You're gonna need to fill out a form, and then we'll look at it. So again, don't panic. If you see something that just doesn't look right, or you're very nervous about something, reach out to your financial aid office, or we also have our One Stop for Student Services. Most financial aid offices will take appointments if you wanted to actually go in and meet with somebody to talk about your offers. So, and again, we do that as well on all of our school visits when you're coming in for orientation, when they have big visit days. Financial aid is there with the admissions team, and then we're just seeing families all day long. So just don't panic. People do this every year. You can too. And it seems very complicated, but in the end, it's just forms. And there's always people there to help you, okay? All right. Well, thank you. Any questions? Yeah. Yes.
So my question is that for internal scholarship, and you said that watch for deadlines, I'm a little bit confused about that because it's not even, the students are not even accepted to the school, but still you recommend to fill out the scholarship?
You would be able to look and see on the various scholarships what the deadlines are. So if they haven't been admitted, most schools aren't going to consider them for scholarships. So yes, that first thing is getting admitted to the schools. And if they haven't sent out your admission yet, I know some schools are rolling, so we're admitting people constantly, and we've been admitting people for 2 months now for next year. There are other schools that do it on a specific date. But yeah, definitely look at those internal scholarships and then what are the deadlines and what is it that you need to supply. But you will need to be an admitted student before anybody's going to look at you for an internal scholarship at that particular school. So we've got someone here for a child entering their 3rd or 4th year of college who's been declaring themselves on their taxes. Do they need to file parent information on the FAFSA? So if the student is under the age of 24, if they are not a veteran, if they are not a ward of the court, if they are not an orphan, they're considered dependent for federal purposes. It doesn't, again, that goes into that, they may have been working all through high school and filing a tax return, but for the feds, that's not what they're looking at. They're looking at age and then those specific circumstances. So in most cases, yes, the parent is going to have to file their information and the student is going to be considered dependent. And that's going to be in that FAFSA section to make the determination. There's like 7 questions they'll ask them. And if you say yes to any of them, then you are independent. If you do not, then you are dependent. Yeah, yes. Yes, so the question is, what happens if they select federal work study, or they say, yes, I want work study, and they get into school and realize, okay, this is way more, and I don't have the time to put in the hours on work study. That's fine. You would just, because you're still going to have to apply for the job once you get on campus, and then you would work with your supervisor to say, yeah, this isn't going to work out. So you just wouldn't be paid for any hours that you did not actually work.
And also, you said the student has to start the FAFSA before and invite the parent.
The parent can start, just make sure that you're using the parent FSA ID as the starting point. Yes, down here, and then we'll come to the back. Is a non-custodial parent's information required? Whoever is providing 51% of their support, then that's the person that's the household that's going to have to supply the information. Sir, in the back. Each parent, so the question was, does each parent need their own FSA ID and password? Yes. Yeah, which is different. That is different from it has been, the way it's been in years past. And that's because in order for the data retrieval for the IRS, they want to be able to get consent from both parties. Yeah. So the question is, if a student is able to fund their education, say freshman and sophomore year, and then they get to their junior year and they do decide they're going to borrow loans at that point, does it hurt them? On the one hand, no, it doesn't hurt them because they haven't borrowed any loans, so the interest isn't accruing, et cetera. So that's good in that you haven't had to take out loans. But you get an annual allotment on your student loans. So freshmen is $5,500, dependent sophomores is $6,500, and then juniors and beyond is $7,500. It doesn't matter. If you didn't use any of those loans in freshman and sophomore, you can't stack it and add that all in on your junior year. Feds don't allow that. Yes. Yeah, so the question was, are there any particulars around 529s? So again, I think that's where you're going to have to sit down sort of at the kitchen table and look at the various offers that you have and make that determination. Do we want to pull money out of the 529 now in order to eliminate the student loans? If you're getting subsidized student loans, again, they're paying the interest, so that's nice. But if all you're getting is unsubsidized, you may want to use 529 funds so that you're not having to borrow until as late as possible in that college career. The other thing that you'll want to do with 529 is make sure that you know what the timeline is. So if it's the Ohio 529 program, that is, for most schools like Kent, we'll do an electronic transfer, so they're not mailing a check or anything like that. But you do need to understand what the timing is, and most 529s want you putting in the request a minimum of 2 weeks prior to the bill due date. So double check that on your 529 plan to make sure you know what that timeline is and get that set up. So, yes, sir. Good luck with that. So the question was, if I wait till later to apply for aid, will I get a better offer? And so I think, that kind of, it depends on the schools, right? So we're a public university. We have some endowed scholarships through the different colleges and universities, but we don't have just a whole slush fund of money that we're going to give someone as a offset just to get you enrolled. So, most of our, you get that discount because, we're a state institution. But other schools, again, I've worked at private universities as well, and they don't like it, but sometimes they will. Again, depends on how good's the GPA, how good are the talents and the skills, is it something that they really want or need? You may be able to have that conversation, but I will say that in most financial aid offices, it's not going to help you. And the later you go, the more likely it is that any aid is already gone. So better to be first in line than last. So the question was, well, the aid never goes away. So some scholarships, you do have to accept the scholarships. And so there will be a deadline on those scholarships that you'll have to acknowledge them. And oftentimes, if it has a donor, a specific donor, they'll require that the student send a donor acknowledgement. I can't tell you, every year we have students who they're awarded thousands of dollars in a scholarship. They either don't accept it or they never do the acknowledgement. And we call them, we email them, we try to reach out, but that money will come back. It will go back into the pool. Yes, sir. So the question was, does it matter who is claiming them on the tax return for dependency? No. So it's all about who's providing 51% of that support for the student. So housing, meals, transportation, Right, so all of those things. So who's paying more money to house, feed, and clothe that child? Either the custodial parent that they're with, or are they, split? It can get complicated, but you're gonna have to, I can't tell you the answer based on individual circumstance. If they're filing jointly on a tax return, yes, so they're gonna have to have that consent, because that tax return is gonna come over, and it's all part of the household. I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you all very much for coming out on a cold and snowy evening. Again, this is a process. Everybody gets through it. Use your resources, call your financial aid officials, and have a